Welcome to the 100X Life podcast, where we activate people who desire to live the words of Jesus and experience the abundant life he promises. I'm your host, Rob Dayton, and I hope this podcast inspires you to put in the work of following Jesus.
Now the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to bind up the brokenhearted and set the captives free.
Welcome to the 100X Life podcast. Hey, I'm so glad you're here, and this is actually the first episode of the podcast. We're going to be dropping an episode every day of the challenge starting on January 2nd. We can talk about the challenge a little bit, the 62-day challenge, but on the onset of this podcast, I want to answer the question, why are we doing a challenge that involves physical requirements alongside the spiritual requirements of understanding the words of Jesus? Remember, 100X Life is all about living the words of Jesus and putting them, actually integrating what he says to do into our lives. That is, in fact, following Jesus, saying yes to him. That's the easy part. And then it gets a little difficult because in following him, we have to do as he says. We have to know and keep his commands in our heart, and we have to follow the words of Jesus. So that means that every single word of Jesus I've identified in the book, about 55. Some people do less. Some people have identified more. And what we're trying to do here is, if we're going to follow Jesus, we're going to look at his words that he said, hey, do this, do this. And many times he's saying, you do this and this will happen. And there are good things that happen because he's promising the abundant life. So we're going to go through each one. And each time you have a word that you're receiving, you have the opportunity to grow that word. And there's a process we're going to talk about in how that word is grown and then eventually exported into other people's lives. We call that reproduction. Kind of a churchianity word is fruit. That comes from the Bible as well, of course. But what is it practically? It's people experiencing that word of Jesus in our lives that becomes attractive. And in that fruit that we're giving them, they experience the seed, the word seed, but they experience in a way where they're not reading it. They're actually living or observing your behavior. And that's why it's so powerful to change the world. So back to this question, if that's what we're doing, if we're trying to indulge in the words of Jesus, why would we have in this challenge 2 45-minute workouts, one outside? Why would we have no alcohol? Why would we do no added sugar? That's hard, Rob. And of course it is. Of course it is. And then drinking 100 ounces of water, eating 4 servings of veggies or fruits a day. That is also challenging for many, many people. On top of the fact that we're doing the spiritual aspect of it, where we're reading one word of Jesus a day, and then we're doing the difficult work of actually journaling our answers to those prompts. And in many cases, we're going to be journaling what we feel like the Lord is saying to us. One member of the Trinity is saying to us. So why do we do those alongside each other? Well, just taking a tip from Paul, and I know Jesus has words about these too that I could call attention to. But in Romans 8 and verses 5, Paul says something that really shows why. Why do we need to do them together? Why is following Jesus a physical effort as much as it is a soul and spiritual effort? In other words, the body has to be involved in following Jesus. And so he gives this juxtaposition. He does this quite often in Romans. He says, those who live according to the flesh or the body have their mind set on what the body desires or the flesh desires. So if you live in accordance with the body, you're thinking, oh, my body wants this, let's get it. My body wants that, let's get it. But those who live accordance with the Spirit have their mind set on what the Spirit desires. So their mindset is, okay, well, here's what the Spirit's desiring. And so now I got to go do that. Oh, here's what the Spirit desires. I'm going to go do that. So what Paul is saying is there's this juxtaposition. There is this battle or this struggle over who is going to lead you? Is it going to be your body that leads you, or is it going to be your spirit that leads you? That's going to be the question. And the reason why Jesus following is difficult is it requires that we have a renewal of our mind. We actually have to renew our mind to take authority over the body. So when the body wants to do something, drink alcohol, or it wants to not work out, or it doesn't want to, it wants that sugar buzz. So let's get that added sugar going. When the body wants that, the mind has to practice a new mind muscle, a faith muscle of no, we're not going to do that. And instead, at the same time, we're saying no so many times to the body and disciplining ourselves and our mind taking authority over our body. Then the mind is going to hand that authority over to the spirit and recognize that the spirit is saying, do this. Again, it's the mindset. The mind is the one in the middle. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what flesh desires, but those who live according to the spirit have their minds set on what the spirit desires. So your mind has this amazing role to take authority over the body and then hand it over to the spirit to lead. That is actually what happened. And so when Jesus says you got to renew your mind, Paul says the same thing. You got to renew your mind. That's the process. And renewal of the mind is the process of taking what the desires of the flesh are, saying no to those things, and then saying yes to what the spirit is doing. That is following Jesus. And we do those things first as a foundation of our lives. We do those with the words of Jesus, because he says, he who has my commands and keeps them, he's the one who loves me. So and just to say it out loud, Jesus's love language is obedience. He wants obedience. Obedience is far better than sacrifice or asking for forgiveness. He wants obedience. That's his love language. He's going to feel love when we actually are capable of saying no to what the body's saying and say yes to what the spirit's saying. Okay. Little bit of information about the mind. Neurologists are really confused on the mind because the conscious mind doesn't seem to be located in the brain. And remember, your brain tissue in your head, that is part of the body. So your unconscious mind, your automatic behaviors, which you've been rehearsing since childhood, sometimes in a very negative, destructive way, or a self-preservation way, sometimes a Jesus way, but those automatic behaviors are in your brain, and they are saying, here's what we're going to do. You've got these automatic messages, like, give you an example of what you learned. So like when you learn to drive, your conscious mind, which is somehow neurologists say is somewhere not in the brain, because what happens is we get to think about what we're thinking about. That's what really distinguishes us from animals, is we think about what we're thinking about. We can actually watch the thought process. So it's kind of like our perspective or our mind is outside of our brain watching the thinking process. And then what's so important about that is that gives us the power and the ability to actually change the way we think. We can actually change the way we think. We can learn things in ways that animals cannot learn. We can, just speaking a language is an insane learning proposition. And we have that capability to do that. Okay. So in your body, let's say you're learning how to drive. And your conscious mind, when you learn how to drive, actually has to do everything. It has to, okay, well, here, I'm going to start the car. Okay. I'm taking off the brake, and then I'm going to accelerate, and I have to turn the wheel, and I have to really be thinking about how far I have to turn in. I have to start judging distances for stopping. And then if you're like me, I learned on an automatic transmission. So we're doing this stick thing with this clutch. I mean, it was pretty crazy what was required of us to drive. Well, what happens is when you're doing that and you're telling the body, the unconscious mind, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, okay, put on the gas, let off the clutch. Okay, we're going to shift. Okay, we're coming to a stop sign. We're going to brake. All this is done conscientiously, but eventually the brain adapts all of that behavior as an automatic behavior. So much so that we can be driving down the freeway having a totally different conscientious thought, or carrying on a conversation, or observing something to the side of the car, and the body is automatically driving, automatically stopping, automatically accelerating. The turn is just automatic. We no longer have to think about it because it's programmed in our unconscious mind. So that is true with everything: how you respond to anger, how you respond to being hurt, how you respond joyfully with good news. All of those emotions are trained in the unconscious mind. In fact, this might actually be helpful for you. Your emotional response, which is the body's, that's a body thing. Your flesh, your body's response to any given circumstance is taken from the unconscious mind. What happens is you experience a circumstance. Let's say you find out that someone lied to you. You experience the circumstance. And then what happens is very, very quickly, actually just like that, the unconscious mind finds 3 to 7 experiences where that exact thing happened in the past. And then it takes the blending of that and says, here's the emotion that you need to have right now. So the unconscious mind is actually dictating, based on the past, what your emotional response is going to be to, in this case, being lied to. So everyone's response is going to be different. But it's all programmed. It's all happening automatically. When we look at the words of Jesus, he's going to be asking us to have a different reaction to being hurt, to being blessed, to people's requests of us. He's got all these actions that we're going to take because we're following Jesus. And many, if not all, at one point are going to be contradictory to the automatic emotional and action that the unconscious mind or the body generates. So following the flesh and having the mindset on the flesh is saying, okay, well, here's what the body needs. My unconscious mind is telling me what to do. How many know the unconscious mind is telling you it's time to eat a cookie? It's 3:00. We need a snack in the afternoon, and it's got sugar, and we need a little high, and it's time. So go do it. And then we just follow the desires of the body and go find that cookie, sometimes at great lengths to drive somewhere and actually get it. Or the craving of coffee. And there's nothing wrong with, everything in moderation. Certainly nothing wrong with coffee, I hope. But when we say no to it, we say we're not going to do it, it's different because the body's saying, hey, get the coffee. That's the first thing. And hey, that's me. I say goodnight to my espresso machine. I'd see you in the morning. Like, I am very committed to coffee. I love hanging out with Jesus while I have a cup of coffee. I picture him doing the same thing. So that's not the bad thing. But if we want to not follow our bodies, there might be a season, let's call it 5 days, where we don't drink coffee because we're going to exercise our restraint on what the automatic flesh is telling us to do. Now, why is that so powerful? Because this is the 60-day challenge. It's got all this physicality and requirements. Why is that going to be important? So we pointed out that there's this battle going on. Which one are you going to follow? Are you going to follow Jesus, which is the spirit, or are you going to follow the flesh, which is what your unconscious mind has previously been programmed? Which one are you going to do? And then you're going to take your mind, and your mind is the key middleman who has the ability to rethink, reprogram that unconscious mind with new actions. Very difficult at first, but eventually, like driving, becomes automatic. Automatic Jesus following. How many people want that? Automatic spirit following. How many people want that? That is all possible. But here's the deal. Oh, the obedience muscle, which is, it's a faith muscle, but so let's just say in the gym, I've got this muscle that's really, really good. The obedience muscle does not need a It doesn't need to get healthy or get bigger or to be worked out. It doesn't need a bad situation where you have to decide between truth and evil. It doesn't need that. Actually, all it needs is when you say no when the body wants something. You just strengthened the obedience muscle. When you say, oh man, I really want that. Let me delay gratification for 6 months. I'm going to put the body on hold. Yes, we're going to get it, but you're not going to get it in your timing and your desire body. I'm going to put it on hold. You just exercised the obedience muscle. In other words, the same muscle that we use to follow Jesus, the same muscle that we use to practice obedience, that same muscle is the one where we say no to the body in like a gymnasium experience, or just like practically. It's not saying no to coffee is not a sin issue, but the effect is the same in that it builds the obedience muscle that will eventually say no to sin. So this is why the 62-day challenge is so transformative, and in my experience has done so much for so many people, because they get real time in these 62 days doing this challenge. They have to say no to the body so many times. The muscle gets really strong for obedience, really strong. And at the same time, we're looking and focusing on Jesus's words and his instructions, which is everything Jesus says would be the Spirit say, hey, do that. The Spirit is in agreement with Jesus. And so these words of Jesus are going to be things we want to say yes to. So while we're saying no and practicing building that muscle to say no to what the body wants, the mind is saying, and the mind has to take that authority. Then the authority is handed over to the Spirit, and we're focused on Jesus's words and the transformative life that they provide and will give us, because they head towards abundant life. Following Jesus is not a sacrifice. Following Jesus is the best life ever. Sin is not a sacrifice. Sin is completely missing out. Obedience is completely getting everything and the abundant life, and it's actually working in the design God had in mind for us. So this 62-day challenge, this is vital. Think of the things in the gym, like the 45-minute workouts. Maybe that's going to be walking. Maybe that's going to be running. Maybe that's going to be on a spin. Maybe you're going to be in the gym lifting weights for 45 minutes. Whatever it is, you're consistently saying, you body will do this. And when it screams, no, I want to stop. I don't want to do anymore. I don't want to get up and at this hour and do this. Every time you say, well, sorry, we're gonna do it, then you build that following, that obedience muscle stronger. We're going to say no to alcohol, and others are going to be drinking. We're going to go through a Super Bowl. People are going to be drinking. And hey, I think that's really cool, because other people are drinking around us maybe, and we're just going to say, hey, I'm not going to do it. And it's not like I'm going to shame anybody. It's just like, no, I'm not drinking for 62 days. That's just all there is to it. The added sugar. So in the added sugar, we're just looking in the cupboard. You're going to have to, in my opinion, just get rid of all that stuff that's in your cupboard. You just look on the ingredients. If it says sugar in the ingredients, it's a no. We're going for completely no sugar, which is going to help you get into veggies and fruits, because veggies and fruits have no added sugar. So that'll help you when you're saying no to this food to get into the better food that's more whole for us and bring healthy. Your body through this 62-day challenge is going to transform. You're going to get healthier. Your body is going to come under the authority of your mind, and your mind is going to give that authority over to the Spirit as you look into the words of Jesus and begin to intentionally, more probably than you've ever before, follow those words and put them into practice and read. So you're reprogramming the unconscious mind, which is the body, with your conscious mind. You're reprogramming the unconscious mind to automatically do the behaviors Jesus wants. That's when we know we have his commandments. We're keeping them because we've hardwired them into the unconscious mind. which is the body. So the body's like saying, no, the automatic behavior is Jesus following. The automatic behavior is obedience. And that's what we're after. So I'm excited, so excited for this journey. And by the way, if you want to take someone on this journey, please do go to 100xlife.com. You can sign up for the challenge there. I'm going to be coaching you every step of the way, every day. I'm going to be dropping a podcast right here every single day to encourage you. We're going to interview people who have gone through the challenge to get insights on living the words of Jesus and how to do the challenge. It's going to be life-giving, but bring people with you. Make sure that you are accountable to a group that's saying, you got this, you can do this. So it's kind of a selfish act, which I think is very positive, to say, hey, come with me, because when you say, come with me, now I have an automatic reason and pressure to continue to do it. So you can do this challenge. Don't be afraid of it. Be excited. It's going to be absolutely amazing. If you believe in the 100X Life movement, please follow and invite a friend by sharing this podcast. The 100X Life movement can also be found on Instagram and Facebook, and also at 100xlife.com. The 100X Life podcast was produced by Jenna D of Jenna D Services, with music by Ryan Ellis.
Was lost, but you found me here, and your fire burnt inside. It will not disappear, because the Spirit